Marhaba, my name is Megan and welcome to Wanderlust Voyages. We are here to tell you all about Morocco, from the cities to the culture to the cuisine. If you'd like to know more about Morocco, be sure to like this video and subscribe, hitting the bell to get notifications whenever we have a new video. Thank you so much for your support, and let's get on with today. Today I want to talk to you about travel to Morocco. I want to cover a lot of the frequently asked questions we get, as well as some of the things that you should know before you travel to Morocco. I would like to start off with some of the culture. Now, a lot of people don't know a lot about Morocco, but most people do know that it is predominantly Islamic. That said, Islam is not mandated. There is freedom of religion there. Most people just happen to be Muslim. A lot of people also then wonder, well, what does that mean for me as an outsider? In reality, not a whole lot. As long as you are not being blatantly offensive to their religion and practices, then there's not really any difference in how you're going to be treated. The people of Morocco are very warm and welcoming and open and accepting, and they love to meet new people and talk to people and make friends with travelers. So, what does it mean? Well, there are a couple of particularities. First of all, if you are invited into a Moroccan home, always remove your shoes. Now, you're not going to do that as soon as you walk in the door, but before you enter where there's carpet. Usually when you come in, it's going to be tiled and everybody wears their shoes in there, but then before you step into the salon, then you're going to remove your shoes. This is also done when you enter the Hassan II Mosque, which is the only mosque in Morocco that as a non-Muslim you would be able to enter. So if you are planning to do that, be prepared. Another thing that a lot of people question about the mosque for women is, do they have to wear a hijab? You do not. Now, I know that different mosques have different rules, and so this is strictly related to the Hassan II Mosque in Morocco. Now, women don't have to wear a hijab anywhere in Morocco, including the mosque, because you're not there to pray. It is not part of your religion. And when you are visiting the mosque, you do have to make sure your shoulders are covered, your knees are covered, and you don't have anything that is low cut. You also don't want to wear anything that is torn or have any disrespectful slogans or pictures on it. It is a holy place of worship, just like anything else. You wouldn't, enter a church that way. Don't do it at the mosque. Now, in terms of hijab and dress outside of the mosque, like I said, American women, Canadian women, travelers don't need to wear hijab, and actually you should not do it because it is something that is a personal reflection of their choice within their religion. You'll notice that not all Moroccan women wear hijab. Some of them do, some of them don't. Some of them wear jeans and sweaters with hijab, some of them wear djellabas without. It is entirely their choice. So don't think that you have to cover your hair, cover your head, anything like that. In terms of how you dress, all we ask is that you respect basic modesty. And this does not mean you have to be covered, all the way to your wrists or anything like that. The same rules apply. We ask that you keep your shoulders covered and any skirts or shorts down to your knees, and nothing excessively tight or low cut. For a lot of people, it's no different than how they dress every day. Something important to note is that this is not a requirement elsewhere in Morocco. It is simply a recommendation. If you are dressed in short shorts and with spaghetti strap tank top, you are going to gain a lot more attention. And as many female travelers know, that's not what you want. That you don't want to be walking through the Medina and hearing people whisper under their breath as you walk by. People meaning men. So both for respect for their normal mode of dress and also for your own comfort and safety, just keep things a bit more modest. However, if you are in one of the larger cities like Marrakesh or Tangier and you're going out at night for a nightclub, then things are much like you will find elsewhere in the world. Women will wear something more revealing, high heels, and completely made up. So feel free to dress accordingly. Now, bringing up nightclubs also brings up the question of alcohol. Even though it is a Muslim country, alcohol is freely sold. It's not nearly as common to find it as it is in the US or Europe or Canada, but you can absolutely find it. There's even a couple of wineries in Morocco that make some wonderful local wine. And it's not something where only foreigners can buy it. Anyone can buy it. Just most Moroccans don't drink, especially in their home. So by all means, you can buy wine there. You don't have to try to smuggle in your own. It's available in hotels, in restaurants that cater primarily to travelers, as well as many shops. Speaking of hotels, some things that you should be aware of in Morocco. There is a difference between hotels and riads. Riads are essentially Morocco's version of a bed and breakfast. Riads were originally family homes. They are typically multiple stories. They have a courtyard, an open air courtyard in the middle that has some sort of water, whether this is a pool, a fountain, or a fountain on the wall. Whatever it is, the moving water helps to keep the building cool in the summer. The buildings themselves are often very, very old, especially because they're mostly found in the Medinas, and the Medinas in Morocco go back 1,000 years or more. So the building might be several hundred years old, but it's only been in operation as a riad for travelers for maybe a few decades. It wasn't until the 60s that this became a common use for these buildings. And riads are going to be where you're going to find all of the intricate scroll work, plaster work, mosaic tiles, and usually a bit more of a local flair in decor. It might be very simple, it might be very elaborate, depending on where you're going and what level it is, but it's going to be something unique and beautiful and an incredible experience. I recommend that everybody who goes to Morocco stays in at least one riad. A lot of riads are also operated by the family that owns them, and they may live there in private rooms as well. And so it's also a great opportunity to experience that Moroccan hospitality and to talk to a local and find out more about what life is like there. That's part of the beauty of traveling, is learning more about different cultures. Another important thing to discuss about Morocco is the currency. Now, Morocco has a closed currency, which means that you cannot get money while you are here in the States, and you cannot exchange it once you're back. You have to exchange or withdraw money on the ground in Morocco and exchange any you have left before you leave. The Moroccan dirham, of course, like any currency, will fluctuate, but it roughly hovers around 9 dirhams to $1. For ease of translation, we usually tell people think of it in terms of 10 to 1, just to make comparison much easier. And one of the important things to know is that cash is the primary mode of payment in Morocco. Of course, in a hotel, in a large restaurant that is meant to cater to travelers, or even a shop that sells rugs or leather or fine jewelry or something else that is going to be very expensive, they will take credit cards. But do not rely on this for everyday purchases. Many places will not take a credit card and you have to pay in cash. That said, how do you get cash? Well, a lot of people don't like to get cash in the airport because of the exchange rate. And while it's true that it is not the most beneficial exchange rate, we still encourage people to get some money in the airport because you may need it as soon as you step outside. Because in Morocco, tipping is done for everything. And one quick moment, I'll get back to that. But so we recommend people exchange at least some money in the airport to get them started, and then they can withdraw more or exchange more later. There are banks, there's ATMs, there's some of the large hotels will do it. However, do not rely on being able to exchange at a hotel or use the ATM at a hotel. Many times they do not have the cash on hand. So, back to tipping. When you are tipping in Morocco, it's going to usually be in very small amounts. So the fact that you tip practically everybody who gives you any kind of service is not actually that much. Now, when I mentioned you may need it as soon as you leave the airport. That is because there are people who will help you with your bags. And one thing to keep in mind is that they do require being tipped afterwards, and they will be very, I don't want to say pushy, but certainly they will act under the assumption that either you will accept the help or you're too nice to say no. If you don't want their help, just be polite but very clear that no, thank you. And very useful phrase for that, la shukran. La meaning no, shukran, thank you. Very important phrase. However, if you are happy to have the help, then by all means, you'll tip them, 10, 15, 20 dirham, whatever it is, depending on how many bags you have and if they're helping you load it into the car or not. In Morocco, tipping is done for practically any and every service. This is everything from what Americans are used to, such as hotels and restaurants, to things that we don't typically consider, such as someone who helps you park or a bathroom attendant. Now, in Morocco, the amounts are, like I said, typically a lot smaller than what Americans consider appropriate for tipping. And it will depend, of course, on what service it is. If it is the person who cleans the bathroom, then anywhere from 1 to 5 dirhams is appropriate. There are some places where it is required to use the bathroom. If it is something like the person who carries your bags, depends on how far they're carrying it, how many bags you have, but it can be anywhere from 10 to 20 to up to 50 dirhams. If you are at a restaurant, sometimes if you are at a very nice restaurant or with a large group, they may put the tip already in, so be sure to check your receipt for that. But typically around 10% of the bill is expected. For guides and drivers, typically between 50 to 100 dirhams per person per day. And again, that will depend on the service provided, how long of a tour you have, and also how many people. If you're on a large group tour with 50 people, then not everybody needs to give 100 dirhams per person per day, but something on the lower end is more appropriate. And when I mention guides, that is all of your guides. The guide at the mosque, it is very polite to tip them. The day guides, and even if you are trying to find your way and someone says, "Oh, I'll help you." Usually, especially in Marrakesh, they are looking for a tip, especially if they're children. And I'm not saying don't do it. By all means, children usually know where they're going. One time I was there with actually some clients, and the taxi driver dropped us off and said, "Okay, you go down this alley." And we were looking, and it wasn't there, what we were looking for. And so we went to these local boys who were sitting there playing and asked, "Do you know where this place is?" They said, "Yeah, come on." And it was the totally wrong direction that the taxi driver had pointed us in. So the boys got us there. We gave them, 20 dirhams or something like that. And because there were, I think, 4 of them. And that was that. But just be aware that if you're asking someone for directions and they lead you somewhere, that's going to be expected. That said, you also want to be very careful, especially in some place like Marrakesh, that they're not going to intentionally get you further lost in the Medina or say, "Oh, do you need a guide? I'll do that." Because chances are you're going to end up at their bazaar or someone else's bazaar and be forced into high pressure sales. So that is why we always, when we have travelers go, we want them to be with one of our guides who will help them get their bearings in the city and show them around without them, being told that they need to buy this rug for $5,000. So that, I think, covers a lot of the tipping information. And we have an entire document on our website about appropriate amounts for all sorts of different situations. So you can always check that out as well. Another important thing that people want to know about in Morocco is the safety. Is Morocco safe to go to? Is it safe for a woman to go by herself? Is it safe in the desert? And overall, the answer is yes. Morocco as a whole is a very safe country. They have much lower rate of violent crime than the US for sure. And even less of that is against travel. Now, this doesn't mean that there is absolutely no risk, but you just need to be smart about your surroundings. If you are in a large crowd, you absolutely want to make sure that if you have a bag, you have it in front of you, that you don't carry your phone in your back pocket. If it sticks out, don't carry it in your front pocket either. Make sure that it is somewhere secure. The same for your wallet, same for any other valuables. Most hotels do offer in-room safe, and we absolutely encourage people to use those. In terms of the safety of women there alone, overall, it is safe, but as per usual, unfortunately, you do have to be a little bit more vigilant about your surroundings and not being nice. Not saying be rude, but a lot of women, their default is to not ignore someone, to acknowledge someone, especially if they're giving a compliment, and to at least, say no thank you. And unfortunately in Morocco, if you are walking alone, by all means, ignore people. Do not turn and look. Do not give them any sort of an acknowledgement. Anything can be taken as encouragement. Whether or not you will face any harassment will vary on where exactly you are, and I am very sorry to say it can vary depending on how you are dressed. One of the very interesting things that I have personally found is that in Fez, if I go through the Medina wearing a jalaba, a traditional Moroccan dress, I get a lot more unwanted attention than if I go wearing jeans and normal Western style dress. I'm not quite sure why that is, but that has been my personal experience from many, many trips there. And so I do encourage people that, if they want to buy a jalaba, by all means, buy it, wear it, enjoy it, but not in Fez. Marrakesh, it's been perfectly fine. I've walked through the Marrakesh Medina by myself, and there are a lot of people. Usually it's, hey lady, do you need help? Do you need to go somewhere? Do you need a guide? And sometimes it's a la shukran as I keep my eyes straight ahead. Other times don't even acknowledge. But just be prepared, it is going to happen. And if you are, if you stop and say, "Oh no, thank you, I'm good," then that stopping is going to give them whatever encouragement they think they need to walk with you and keep trying. So just keep going. In terms of safety in more remote places, one of the things that we do encourage is that you don't really go by yourself. When you are traveling with one of our groups, you have at least a driver, and that driver will help make sure you don't go anywhere that you should not. And certainly at hotels and camps and things like that, there are other people around. So overall, very safe country, but unfortunately, no place is 100% safe. A couple notes about food in Morocco. Now, if you are booking a stay in the desert or a riad that includes dinner, just be aware that it is not going to be you get a menu and you get to choose. They will be cooking one thing and that's what everybody gets. This may be a tagine that has to cook all day, and so it's not something where a change can be made at the last minute. That said, if you have any particular dietary restrictions, you need to let them know in advance if meals are being provided. And this includes if you are gluten-free, if you are vegan, if you have any other dietary restrictions or allergies, let them know. You also want to make sure to let your guide know or your driver know so that they can help you out if there's any potential miscommunication. A lot of the larger hotels and in the larger cities, they are more accustomed to these special requests because there are a lot more travelers. You can find gluten-free bread in Marjan. You can find gluten-free bread usually in the breakfast in a lot of large hotels. But if you're in a smaller place, they're probably not going to have that available for you. Also, if you are gluten-free, be aware that it is also in many soups. So not only do you have to avoid the couscous and the breakfast breads, but also be aware of soups that may be thickened with flour. If you are vegan, then breakfast might be a little bit of a challenge because it is typically many types of bread, many of them that are made with eggs or butter, served with honey and oil and cheese and eggs and yogurt and fruit. So your breakfast options might be a little bit limited. However, lunch and dinner, the vegetarian tagines and the cooked salads will provide many different options. A lot of Moroccan meals, if it's a large meal, it begins with an array of cooked salads that have, maybe one is potatoes, one is zucchini, one is eggplant, one is carrots, one is green peppers and tomatoes, and they are delicious. So you can absolutely make a meal out of those. Another note about food is that a lot of it is served family style. If you are ordering a large tagine with your travel partner, then it may be one thing, and depending on where you are, they may give you forks, they may not. Because typically in Morocco, tagines are eaten with your hands. You use bread to scoop it up. The last thing I want to talk about is just a couple of practical things to consider if you are traveling to Morocco. First, the outlets. They are the European outlets, which are 220 volts, typically twice what American currency is. That means that not only do you need an outlet adapter, which again, the European outlet adapter, but for some items you may need a power converter as well. Now, most items are going to be okay with just an outlet adapter. However, anything that generates heat, whether it's a hairdryer, a hair straightener, curling iron, we absolutely recommend you use an outlet, a power converter. I learned this the hard way when I had my hairdryer, and there were sparks coming out of the outlet. I quickly bought a local one. So while most hotels do provide hair dryers, I know that some people like to have a special one that they like to use because hotel ones may be a little rinky-dink. And with that, you absolutely need the power converter. Now, in terms of charging your laptop or cell phone or camera or whatever, the higher voltage is usually not a problem as long as you are not leaving it plugged in for long periods of time. So we recommend not just charging your phone overnight, and if it's not all the way depleted, or leaving something charging while you're gone. Power banks are a great way to get around this. You can charge those just fine, and usually they are equipped to take the larger voltage, and that way you can then use them as well as being able to use them on the go. Something else important to keep in mind with regards to packing is shoes. Now, Morocco has a lot of different types of terrain. You may be doing some hiking, you may be out in the Sahara Desert, or you may just be walking around town. A lot of the sidewalks and pathways and alleyways are not exactly stable all the way across. You know, there's a lot of fluctuation in the pathways or walkways in the old Medinas. So be prepared for that. Be prepared for a lot of walking. A lot of people who take our tour of Fez, if they have a step counter, they say anywhere from 5 to 7 miles that they have walked that day. And so make sure you have comfortable shoes. And we also recommend, if you are taking a tour of the Medina, not open-toed shoes, because there will be parts of the Medina where, maybe the butcher is washing some of the blood out and it goes into the alleyway, and you do not want that all over your feet. Speaking of walking in Morocco, the steps are not quite the same as you will find in the US. A lot of them may be very narrow, they may be very tall, or they may be slightly uneven. So be very careful with stairs in Morocco. Don't assume that you can walk down them without looking the way you would in the US, because they may not be what you are expecting. So I hope this covered a lot of questions that you may have, either thinking about going to Morocco or preparing for a trip yourself. If you have any others, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. I am always happy to answer them. And of course, I want to remind you that we have our Moroccan Sweets cookbook available. It is available for purchase both on our website and on Amazon now, and it is a wonderful collection of recipes. Again, Shebekia, I am so amazed. I have finally figured out how to make them correctly, and that alone is worth getting the book for. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you later. Have a great day. Excuse me. Princess, this is not time for your close-up. Get out of here. Come on. Before you go to Morocco. Well, excuse me. Do not. No.